So I want to thank you for all the hard work and effort that you guys put into not only building this board, but the time that you guys spend on the road, the work that you guys do, and the information that you guys gather is really the lifeblood of this organization.
The combine is designed in a way where it's difficult to be successful 100% of the time. You may have a bad interview, you may have a bad lift, you may run a bad time. On my end, I want to see guys who push through that grit.
These are some of the notes that we took and had some of the offensive linemen go over with Coach Kugler. It's very enlightening because you see like, wow, this kid is on top of his stuff. And the football intelligence just kind of comes through.
You try to make sure they enjoy the moment because there's a lot of young men that would be dying to have the same opportunity they have.
You know your player, you know your area, you know your region, and you came to the table prepared and ready to go.
At the end of the day, like we've always talked about, when a guy goes up there with his final grade, that's a Cardinal grade. So right now, I mean, it's pretty early mornings. It start with watching film and generally end the day watching film. And we'll watch combine interviews. A lot of times from the combine, I'll take notes while guys are talking and, you know, what my impression was. There's a lot of work that goes into it. It's a puzzle. And you can watch as much tape as you want, but to have personal interactions with each of these players and to get to know them and to understand where they come from and their background, to me, you can't put a price on that. And Indianapolis and the Combine is really our first opportunity to get up close and personal. So it was a long week, but it's necessary.
You've been aggressive with trading picks for players, veteran players. Do you feel more, I don't know, reluctant to trade away maybe the 23rd pick for a veteran and opting to build through the draft instead?
Well, ideally, when you have a young quarterback, you do want to build around them to some degree, but again, that's that balance. You know, you only have so many players that can produce right away, and if you have a known commodity and it's a relatively decent draft pick, you have to weigh the balances, and again, with not only the compensation you're giving up, what's the contract look like? I do admire that aggressive approach that other teams have taken as well. So it just, again, to me, it's sort of how your roster's structured. Part of my job that is the most rewarding is to come to places like Indy, get back to the basics and watch the players work out.
You try to make sure they enjoy the moment because there's a lot of young men that would be dying to have the same opportunity they have.
Come on, keep running! Go.
What's up, Zachary? My name is Quentin Harris, Vice President of Player Personnel. Here, my role is really just to get to know the players, and on the side, organizing future events, organizing the local pro day, the pro days around the country, the 30 visits, who's gonna visit the facility, and just a lot of logistics. Many hats, but I enjoy it.
So go! Come on. Oh, Giant, that's it. Good job.
I remember my combine experience, and I remember your brain's in a fog, because there's always something going on. So having done both, it gives me a better insight. I know what these guys are thinking.
King Green, Texas A&M.
Go, KG. Give me that 3 count, boss.
It's a lot more relaxing from this perspective, much more relaxing. The combine is designed in a way where it's difficult to be successful 100% of the time. You may have a bad interview, you may have a bad lift, you may run a bad time. So under the circumstances, you're flying in on an airplane, who knows what time you got, and you go to the medical facility, you meet with the doctors, you talk to people like me all night, then you gotta get up, you gotta lift, so you're not at peak performance in terms of rest, any of that stuff. So on my end, I wanna see guys who push through that grit, because it's easy to mess one thing up and let it snowball, and then you're messing another thing up. So you really have to stop the bleeding when it comes to that. Understanding that and being positive that if something does go wrong, you know what, that's just the circumstances.
Let me turn it over to Q.
Thank you, Michael. Everybody who knows me knows I'm super positive, and I feed off positive energy. I just want everybody to take 10 seconds. That's all I need, all we need, and just think about that feeling of hoisting the Lombardi Trophy up. Visualize the energy, the excitement, harness it, bring it to work with you every day. When I learned about the process of manifestation and visualizing and seeing things before they happen, visualizing before they happen, it spreads. And if you get enough buy-in and people on the same page and the same mantra, we have a common goal, and we believe no matter what, we believe that something positive is going to happen, something good is going to happen, and that's always been my mindset. So at the end of the day, once I flip the switch and remember, hey, no matter what happens, it's going to end up great. Our college scouts do a phenomenal job in terms of their research and getting to know these guys, so they set the table for us. So when we come in and talk to these players, we know what some of these issues are with these guys, so we can kind of probe and figure out who they are.
What was the change in terms of, applying yourself?
Because a guy may have a reputation of being a bad guy or a bad person, but when you talk about them and learn their family history and learn where they come from, you can get a better understanding of who they are. And you're like, this kid is not a bad kid. Look where he came from. Look where he's at now. Now he's rough around the edges, but he's improving, he's maturing. So when we do miss on players, we miss on the person. So the interview process is a critical component of being here.
So we are headed to our formal interview suite in Lucas Oil Stadium. Every team has 2 different suites. One of the suites is for the workouts, which start on Thursday, and then the other ones are for these interviews, which every team has 45 of them. So really trying to maximize our efficiency through that, and you guys will kind of see our operation and how we try to stay efficient through that. Everyone that's going to the stadium for formals or informal interviews, they're all going through this corridor right here. One of these years I'll have to wear a watch or something to see how many steps we get in a day. All right, headed up to the lower suite level.
Lower suite level.
So now we're approaching our formal interview suite. This is us, Arizona Cardinals, LS36A, and this is where the action happens. This is my 8th combine with the Cardinals, and this is where I first met Steve. This was my first opportunity to get into the league, and it's a lot of that way for a lot of people too. So my title is the College Scouting Coordinator, and my role is got a lot of different components to it. This time of year, it's organizing the combine and making sure all the logistics and everything is taken care of. It's an exciting week. It's a big help in kind of stacking the draft board. In terms of getting this room set up, there's a number of pieces that go into that. The first piece being just making sure we have the right number of tables and chairs. The next part of it is because we're in here for 2, 3, 4 hours at a time at times, ordering food, and making sure that, the guys are kind of keeping their energy up. The snack game is definitely really strong here. And so making sure we have that food, the guys can sit here comfortably for 3, 4 hours, and, they're not kind of, losing their focus because they're hungry or they're thirsty, all that. So the food component is to it. Communicating with our video staff, making sure that we're filming every interview that we do. That's important because a lot of times we'll ask ourselves what was actually said in that interview, and we'll refer to notes, and sometimes notes aren't good enough. So we can watch the interview and we can kind of go back through that process that we did with the player and kind of re-get a feel for them. I think in a nutshell, that's basically it all. And just making sure that we're ready to go in the setup process. Coffee's going, and so now, my next thing was really just making sure that this video is set up and ready to roll. We have a countdown video right here, so this is bringing it down from, it's going to be start at 20 minutes, go right down to 0, and that's our indicator to know if we're running late and to know if we are, we got to start wrapping it up. So we have tight ends today, and so what I'll do is I will bring up this cut up, and I'm going to share it to the television over there. Those are one of the things that we will make sure is ready to go before we start these meetings. Today we have tight ends available. These are some of the notes that we took and had some of the offensive linemen go over with Coach Kugler. As we get to the football player side of it, Coach Kugler does this exercises where he puts up all these different fronts. These are 4 interior fronts and these are 4 exterior fronts. And he'll teach it to them directly, almost just like an install in the meeting room. And then he'll say, we're going right back to the film. So the guys will turn around, they'll watch 5, 6 plays of film, and then before we finish, they'll bring them back to the board. And it's a really good test of their recall. It's very enlightening because you see like, wow, this kid is on top of his stuff. And the football intelligence just kind of comes through. That's a big component of getting that part of it done in this meeting, is really having an understanding of how the guys learn, not just how well they learn, but what's their best process. So if they do end up with us, we're kind of, we're starting at a really good place and we know how to communicate with them. And so that's the big goal of kind of using the board and the easels. And then really from here, it's kind of a waiting game. These players have such interesting backgrounds. Every one of them is interesting and every one of them has a story to tell. And it's our job to figure out what's the best for the Cardinals.
What's the challenge when you're at 23 and obviously so many things can happen in front of that, barring a trade or anything like that, but what's the challenge there, especially knowing that it could be just about a group of guys sitting there when it gets to you?
Yeah, it's the hardest part is to try to think about who's legitimately going to be there. You always sort of play it out in your mind and you think about different scenarios, and you have to go through that, and that's why we have our mock drafts and some of those exercises that certainly help the process. But it's tough, and I think the year we picked Dale Buchanan, I look back at that draft and I think about the way that the board fell, and that year we had 4 guys that we absolutely loved. I remember that, and they literally went right before we picked. And you just got to be prepared for that. That's going to happen, and you have to have a strategy whether you're going to stay there and pick or you're going to trade back or vice versa. If you have somebody you love and you want to go get them, go get them.
Coach, thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Good job.
Thanks, guys.
So schedule-wise, any updates or thoughts on the next week?
No updates other than, different than in the past where we would kind of have that Wednesday before the draft off. We're going to mock on Wednesday. We're going to talk a little bit more about free agency in the back end of the 120 and kind of stack that a little bit better for free agency, hopefully. That's about it.
We have a little less than a week to go, and I think that it's a great time to continue to watch film, make calls, gather more information. If there's any questions or concerns, reach out to the players, reach out to college coaches, and let's make sure that we're prepared. But just want to thank you for all the hard work and effort that you guys put into not only building this board, but the time that you guys spent on the road. The thing that I try to think about quite often is, being a former college scout and being on the road and understanding what that life is like, and you sort of feel like a nomad sometimes because you're out there on the road and you feel like you're not really a part of the team, but at the same time I think you all know that the work that you guys do and the information that you guys gather is really the lifeblood of this organization. I want to make sure you guys understand how much I appreciate the work you guys have done and all the hard work that goes into this job. It's obviously a tough one. I thought Drew did a fantastic job of running the meetings, and it's obviously a tough job to do, having a variance of opinions. Any additional thoughts, Q or Drew?
No, the only thing I say is I really appreciate you guys, being a former player and you step away from the game, and there's that camaraderie that you lose and you miss. And so I just really appreciate the camaraderie, the fellowship, the family atmosphere we have. And that's outside of the hard work that you guys do, we all do. So I appreciate you guys.
I can't thank you guys enough for the information, for the hard work. And anytime I look down to the table and I ask you guys a question, whatever it was, you guys had an answer, which tells me you know your player, you know your area, you know your region, and you came to the table prepared and ready to go. And that's exactly what we ask you guys. That's how it makes it easier for us to make decisions because you guys came prepared, you guys came ready, and you came ready to roll. And that's why we built the board we did. That's why we're going to have success in this draft and going forward.
Last thing I'll say, guys, is obviously we've talked about that board is for us. When a guy goes up there with his final grade, that's a Cardinal grade.